Hi, I'm Larkin Swain. Welcome to Sanctuary, an ongoing conversation for seekers like me who want to dive deep into the meaning and power of the temple. These are expansive, transparent, and sometimes challenging conversations with thoughtful and wise people about the history, the symbols, the rituals, and the experiences that make up temple worship. I have a lot of questions. Maybe you do too. Welcome to the journey. Hey, Mindy.
Hey, it's so good to be here, Larkin.
So good to have you here. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed reading your book,
Thank
Endowment
you.
of Love. I took so many notes. I had so many thoughts, pages
Great.
really of notes, and so I'm excited to dive into it.
Okay,
and
awesome.
pick your brain. You've been involved with the development of this project, Sanctuary, for a few years, from what I understand. And I just would love to know how you got involved and why you're so passionate about the temple.
Well, I got involved, I guess, probably 5 years ago. I absolutely love Faith Matters' approach to things and its expansive way of thinking. I am all about expansive thinking, so it was a very easy decision to do whatever I could to help out. And in terms of loving and being passionate about talking about, studying about, writing about the temple, I would say that really started about 8 years ago when I took a really deep dive into Eve and Eve and Adam's story, the garden story, why it's such a fundamental piece of the presentation of the endowment. And that resulted in my first book, Eve and Adam, Discovering the Beautiful Balance. And I think in really figuring that out for myself, like the point of life, mortality, it just totally reframed the way that I see the temple and temple worship and my experiences in the temple. And so then as I progressed through all of my studies and research and all of those different avenues, decided to go to Divinity School. Also had the opportunity to start teaching about the temple to young adults at BYU living on campus through a stake calling. It just, like everything aligned perfectly. So my life was temple study for about 5 years and still very much is, but it's just gone off in so many different facets, which is exciting because it all makes the temple seem bigger, which I think is a really valuable perspective, that it's all about thinking bigger.
Oh, I love that. So did it start 8 years ago, this whole journey? And did you
it really did
feel something lacking in your temple experience and that kickstarted it? Or
yes, there was that piece of it, but even more than that, I was doing a lot of nonprofit work related to organizations lifting and supporting women. And that kind of dovetailed into some of my questions and frankly issues with temple worship. And of course, as lots of listeners will be aware, there have been a lot of changes in those 8 years, which have helped in some regards. But really, my desire to figure out Eve's story and be able to understand for myself her faithful courage was crucial in my figuring out God's plan for women. Really, where do women fit in this picture? Is it true that our heavenly parents love women as much as they love men? Yes, I will testify to you. Yes, I absolutely believe it is. But sometimes in our mortal experience, it doesn't seem that way. And so I had to do a lot of figuring that out for myself. I really didn't start out to write a book, certainly didn't start out to write 2 books, but it turns out a lot of people feel like I felt and have a lot of the same questions I did. And it just sort of evolved. And I'm grateful because I think people experience the temple in such a wide range of ways. And if you look at the 2 extremes, one extreme feels very heavy and like there are burdens involved. I think I was at that extreme in younger years, maybe I would say in my 30s and early 40s, I felt that heavy weight. And I think when we can reframe and see it from the other end of the spectrum, it actually lightens everything. And in these last 8 years or so, I feel like I've made that shift because of my personal seeking. And it's a really happier, more effective way to live. And I think that's really the message of the second book. That's what an endowment of love is all about.
That's beautiful. And that feels really hopeful.
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed this on your journey, but I find in myself, there's like these ups and downs, and there's these seasons where
yes,
it feels heavy, and seasons where it feels light, and then feels heavy again. And then so
definitely.
Yeah, it's maybe part of the journey, but it feels hopeful to.
Yes. I think to keep our eyes on love and God's love as the whole project really helps with the hope angle of it. And I'm all about hopeful. I'm done being sad and feeling heavy. I would really like to feel happy and hopeful.
Oh, I love that.
And healthy. It's a healthy feeling, right?
Yeah. So your book, The Endowment of Love, kind of your whole premise is that this temple journey is a journey of love and relationship, and your subtitle, Embracing Christ's covenant way of living and loving, is compelling.
Yes.
And
I hope so. Good.
I love the use of the word embrace here. And I just wonder if you would share a bit about this way of embracing that Christ is inviting us into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's think about the word embracing for a minute. First of all, the connotation of embrace is really love-based. It's not clenching. It's not clinging. It's not smothering or crushing, right? But it's actually like reaching out in love. And the real reason it seems perfect for me related to the temple is because there's this Hebrew term that the word is shamar in Hebrew, in the Hebrew Bible, and it gets translated, particularly in the King James Version, as keep. And keep in our modern English is really not an ideal translation for this idea in terms of keeping our covenants or keeping God's law. If we can back up to, say, Middle English, like the King James Version, we might be able to appreciate the word a little bit more, because we'd be seeing the sort of shepherding aspect of it, which is really what is at the heart of the Hebrew word. In fact, the characters, those Hebrew characters, are meant to make you think about a sheepfold. And if we think of a shepherd keeping their sheep, well, we know a lot about God as the good shepherd, and there's really this deep element of love there. But in modern English, we've really lost that. And so it feels very legalistic. It feels like these are rules we must keep, like there's judgment involved, like it's heavy, right? Where if we can see it instead as the idea of guarding or cherishing or embracing, it really quickly reframes the project to one of love and puts our eyes, it gives us lenses of love to look through. And I think it shifts everything. So I feel like that's a valuable word to have there. I love that word.
It feels like it brings me into my heart.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like.
Yes, from your head.
From the head and
to the heart.
Yeah, this legalistic duty, and I've got to make sure I'm like strategizing and getting it all right.
Yes.
And
yes,
it just
keeping feels
feels
transactional.
Completely.
Right? And duty bound.
Yes.
And this feels much more integrity based from a place of love.
And relationship.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you speak about this in your book, transactional versus relationship. And I love that. So you speak of this process of celestialization that we're engaging with. But I love that word. And I wondered if you would just explain what that is.
Sure. So, not to put words in President Nelson's mouth, but we all know he's talked a lot about thinking celestial. I personally love to talk more about acting celestial and being celestial. I think our goal is for heaven to begin here. There's an interesting tension that I think we often feel within our tradition. We think a lot about the last days, and we're the Latter-day Saints, right? And there is this sense, some people have these people sitting in their gospel doctrine class, right, that are a little bit of doomsdayers. I don't love that approach at all. And I feel like we have to appreciate that there are two sides to the coin, that yes, things might be getting harder, falling apart. You could certainly make a case for that. But at the same time, if we're not doing our part to bring heaven down and have heaven here, then I think we're missing a really key point. I think it's much more valuable to focus on heaven beginning here, and that we're being invited to co-collaborate with the Lord in doing that building. We're invited to be co-creators with him in doing all the work to make it a happier, healthier, more heavenly place right now. And a lot of that begins by acting celestially, which often precedes becoming celestialized. And there's no reason to wait till far distant eternities for that.
I love this. This is something I feel really deeply. There's this phrase that we use a lot, enduring to the end.
Yes.
And that also feels heavy. And
yes.
I have felt and observed that there's this narrative, this sense of like, okay, if I just grind out life now, then I will earn my heaven at the end of this life. And what you're speaking to feels so important, and it feels like exactly what Christ is inviting us into, that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and this is available here and now, that it only is in the here and now, really, that we can enter into heaven. And I feel that especially not only as disciples of Christ, but as covenant keeping children of God, we have this so much available to us, this added power and support to anchor heaven down onto earth at a time that's so needed. And I think it starts with first believing that is not only possible, but the plan.
Yes.
For us to experience that now.
Yeah.
And that feels really hopeful.
You know,
today.
what if we paired the phrase embracing the now every time we say enduring to the end? Like it would be a little more palatable, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's this danger of spiritual bypassing, of just skipping the mortal piece and just keeping our eyes on the prize. Yep. And I think that's not super helpful. I think it's really ideal to step away from that. And even sometimes, I think sometimes we're familiar with this notion that, oh, I just need to go spend all my time in the temple. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But I think really it would be helpful for us to feel like I need to pop into the temple to maybe brush off some of my tarnish and get a boost, get some spiritual encouragement, and then get right back out that door and get back to work. I think that's personally a perspective that helps me see it differently and avoid the danger of spiritual bypassing.
I love that. It feels like the temple and these laws, these higher laws, are God's way of showing us how to create that life here and now for ourselves. Yes. And you go into that in your book. And one of my questions is, okay, so there are these 5 laws, obedience and sacrifice, and the law of the gospel, and the law of chastity and consecration. And there's a lot of people who are living those laws all over the world.
Absolutely.
Who never even encountered LDS temple language. Yes. And I feel confident that they are experiencing the blessings of keeping those laws.
Absolutely.
That there is just a beauty and holiness that flows through that kind of lifestyle.
Yes.
So my question is, what difference does it make to enter into a temple and make deliberate promises in the forms of ordinances and covenants versus just making promises with God in your heart and choosing to live a certain way? Why do we need to get the body involved in this specific way?
Yeah.
Does it make a difference?
Definitely. Well, I think it does, but I also agree with you 100% that this is going on all over the world in all different traditions. And part of that, I think, points to the evidence that this is, in fact, the way that relationships work best. When we have these elements of obedience, which I would just reframe, because I know we don't think of being obedient to one another in our mortal relationships, but if we reframe that a bit as loyalty, commitment, and trust, which are really kind of the three key components of obedience to the Lord, right? Then we can recognize that really every deep relationship we have with another human has those three elements deeply at work, right? At work with helping us have better relationships. So we can see that sacrifice is much easier to see with our mortal relationships. We know that when you have a close friend who gives up something that they care about in order to help you or be with you or love you, it deepens your bond, right?
Totally.
So I think these are really effective elements of quality, eternal type of relationships. So it's natural that people would figure these out on their own as well.
Yeah.
And we've got all that evidence. But then you point out two key things, and I kind of separate the embodied piece of it. Maybe we can come to that next. But you first were talking about why it matters that we go to the temple and enter into this covenant relationship. And there are a couple of ways we might see that. But I think the key idea is that a covenant relationship is reciprocal in nature. It goes both directions, right? So it's like the true meaning of the word share. Sometimes in our tradition, we talk about sharing, like sharing the gospel. And maybe what we actually mean is just giving it, but not the back and forth, right? But true sharing is back and forth. It's like ping pong, right? And having like discussion, it just flows naturally in both directions. And I think when we can start to recognize that deepening our covenant relationship with the Lord increases that the rate of the reciprocity of there, in a sense that we feel it more naturally, his love flowing into us as our love flows towards him and others, then it helps us do that even more effectively. And I think we could have some discussion about all the different stages of a covenant relationship. I would propose that just by virtue of choosing to follow Christ in our premortal existence was the first stage of our covenant relationship. And in that regard, I feel like everyone on earth is in some degree in a covenant relationship with God because they've chosen to be here and experience mortality. But I think that in our tradition, we certainly believe that with each successive covenant, we're deepening that relationship. Sort of like in all of our relationships, there's a difference between a casual acquaintance and a spouse or a best friend, right? And it's these increasing layers of trust that come with that deepening commitment. So I think when we go to the temple and we make additional covenants with the Lord, it's like we're adding strands to that rope that's binding us to him. And, you know, an 8-strand rope is a lot stronger than a 1-strand rope. And it just, physics, right? Like there's a natural progression there. And so I think that helps. But then you brought up a second point about the embodied piece of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's valuable to also look at every ordinance and covenant as being kind of this paired spiritual, physical force working together. And the embodied element of actually being in the temple, doing like a physical movement that carries symbolism, signifies these commitments, makes it a soulful experience in that it's interweaving the spirit and the body in a way that just opens our soul to the ideas. And a lot of that comes through, I think, practice, literally, in thinking more expansively when we're in the temple, of really embracing those symbols in a way that we're almost digesting them and metabolizing them in a very physical sense that makes them potent reminders of what our goals are as we walk out that door again. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so good and so helpful. one thought I'm having as you're speaking is I'm not married, but I can imagine that the quality of the relationship changes when you enter into this ceremony together and choose to bind yourself to another person. I there's a lot of people who, we choose marriage.
Yeah.
It's not maybe necessary, some people would feel, but it changes the quality of the relationship to create this container.
But I also think it's because to do that is evidence that you've both made all the prior commitments and you're so aligned in what your goals are and in having Christ be a really crucial member of the relationship, right? That each of your relationships with Christ are so front and center in your view all the time, that by the time you then make that ultimate commitment to one another, it's really making it this three-way relationship that is going to make everything more effective because you're prioritizing your relationship with him in how you then relate to each other. And I think that's immensely helpful.
I love that. Okay, I want to come back to this idea of symbols.
Sure. Yeah.
I love, you speak about this in your book and you use this phrase, mining symbols for new meaning. And I loved that. And I wonder if you would speak to how we can maintain this fresh new relationship with the symbol instead of staying stuck in one understanding, how to keep it new.
Yeah. I think this is where expansive thinking really comes into play. And this is the danger in some ways, and I'll qualify this in a moment, but in some ways when we talk too much about the temple, what that becomes is leaders and parents defining things, which I think we want to be really cautious about. A lot of times when we define something, it's almost like we're reducing it to one idea rather than appreciating that there are lots of nuances to it. There are lots of layers of symbolism. And there's a risk when we're teaching someone who's looking to us as a mentor that as soon as we put one definition out there, they're going to just grasp that and hang on to it and turn off their own mind. Like, this means this, A means B, and now I don't need to think about that anymore. And I think that's the biggest mistake that we can make in how we help prepare the people we love for experiencing the temple, is we need to not define things. But at the same time, it's really helpful to have conversations that are truly sharing conversations. Like imagine if you could gather 4 or 5 close friends and say, let's mine this symbol. And maybe to get it truly neutral, maybe you'd even need to have them write it down before they share it so that they're not influenced by what somebody else says. Like, oh, I didn't think of that. Well, I bet she's right. Or I bet he's right. No, there's very little right here. It's an idea of thinking bigger. And so if you could have discussions about what's another way I could see this, for example, through study, for eons, certainly centuries, people have been writing about the way that they see sacred symbols. And the deeper you dig into the annals of history, the more layers of meaning that you'll find, and start to recognize them all as valid, just different, right? Yeah. Sometimes it can also help because some of our symbols are so sticky. We've heard something and we can't get it out of our mind. It might help to just pick something in the temple that you've never even thought of as a symbol, and then start examining that and ask yourself, where could a symbol be in there? Like, what could one of the meanings of this image? For example, we used to have altar cloths over the altars of the temple. We don't so much anymore, which I think is a shame because it's a really rich symbol. But just ponder, what could a lace altar cloth possibly represent there? And practice on those ones that you haven't let sink into you so deeply, and then bring those expanded thinking skills to those ones that you feel like have been limited by your grandparent who told you what they mean. You know, that idea.
I love that. That's really helpful. I have a lot of friends, even me myself. I'm quite new on the temple journey. I was endowed 3 years ago, and I mean, it's just so abstract and it's so different. And I know that for a lot of people, it feels really overwhelming to approach and just know where to even begin.
Yeah.
So I love this recommendation of just choosing one symbol that you feel maybe curious about or hadn't thought much about.
Yeah.
And there's this phrase that a woman I know uses. I think you know her, Mandy Green.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I remember
Mandy.
seeing you guys together actually at an event, and she uses the phrase pulling threads.
Yes.
Finding a thread, pulling the thread, and see if it unravels and what it opens up into. And I've found that to be so effective in my life, specifically when I'm feeling stagnant and I'm feeling like there's just no juice right now in my engagement with any part of the gospel, but the temple especially. And when I've just chosen something that I'm curious about or I want to understand, and then I just start digging and pulling at that thread, it's amazing what it opens up into. And I think any thread can take us to the center, which is Christ.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't maybe necessarily matter what angle you come at. You just choose something.
And curiosity, I think, is the key to that.
Yeah.
Find the thing that is interesting to you, right? For me, like I said, it was women's issues that sent me down all the rabbit holes, that there was so much to be found there. Like, it's just, I'll never find all that I now realize is there. I just write stacks of books that I just can't wait to get into more, to give me new ideas to ponder and think about.
We need to do an episode on that specifically, I think, is what I'm feeling.
Could bring all the stacks.
Yeah, that would be fun. One thing that I want to touch on is you speak so much about love, and Christ is teaching us the way of love. And I often see in our community, and I've deeply felt at times in my own life, this challenge to just feel God's love, to really experience it. I think intellectually we understand it and we talk about it and we may even believe in it, but sometimes it feels really hard for people to actually feel it and know it in their bodies and in their hearts. And I feel this temple journey is inviting us into a deeper experience of God's love so that we can bring it out into this world. Can you speak to that and maybe what you would offer to someone who's struggling with that?
Well, my number one suggestion would be to really hone in on that word feel, because we talk about experiencing or understanding. You use both of those words in that as you ask that. And I think it's recognizing that ultimately we're seeking that feeling, and feeling is physical, right? It's sense, it's sensory, it's emotional. It's the merging of body and spirit in a way that we have some actual internal physical thing that happens. Like that if doctors were tracking somehow, they would be able to figure out, like, am I warming up? Is my heart beating faster? Am I swelling somehow? Am I feeling lighter? I don't know if a doctor could track that, but sometimes we feel that, right? And I think for me, getting into my body makes all the difference in the world. So whether it's reaching out and touching someone, actually holding a hand as I'm talking about deep thoughts and feeling the touch of someone I care about like that, that's helpful to me. Getting out in nature and moving my body like outside. And you don't need to be in some gorgeous canyon or vista or something. I mean, grass, right? Grass is pretty spectacular when you look closely at grass. Or sometimes I've told my grandkids, like, let's go out on a walk and let's find 5 different kinds of leaves and then just examine, like, what makes them different. Let's feel them. How do they feel different, right? Physical experiences like that invite us into that state of awe. I've actually been doing a lot of deep diving into the state of awe and how we get there and what it does, how it changes how our brain starts to function, when we can have an awe moment, how it just opens our mind. I'm just like a flower blossoming, right? And it invites us into a more expansive way of thinking. And that almost always involves some physical angle to it, whether we're getting out into nature, we're looking at something beautiful, we're touching something that somehow is resonating with us, right? A sculpture particularly speaks to me. We're having a collective worship experience, right? Like that to me has been very profound. When I attended Divinity School, just to worship with Christian siblings and see the variety of ways that we all worship was really awe-inspiring to me. And those are the moments that I feel God's love, often through my tear ducts is my evidence, but lots of ways. It's just that bigger feeling of cosmic awe. So I'd suggest figure out how you do that.
Yeah.
And then do more of that and see if you can't start to recognize, oh, I feel love. That's what I feel here.
That's so beautiful. I love the way you said that. I think one thing that I have experienced myself, I've noticed other people experience, is if I'm not feeling God's love inside the temple, is this not working? And I have found for myself that the temple is a way of teaching us how to go out into the world and live. And I love what you're speaking to, of going out and experiencing the world around us. God made this incredible world that's just so glorious, and sometimes it's easy to get stuck in our little bubble, and I think God is trying to teach us how to go out and engage with the world and the people around us in a way that creates heaven.
Well, and let's just think like what you just said, that's a little bit of a limiting idea that maybe we've culturally been taught that, oh, if you want to feel God's love, go to the temple and then come out and share it. But there's nothing wrong with figuring out, I best feel God's love outside hiking while I'm moving my body and in nature. And then if I go to the temple and bring that feeling with me, then I can really have a valuable practice experience there. And it's just like this upward cycle that then I come out and I do better. And then I go feel the awe somewhere else again. And then I go back to the temple. It doesn't need to be like you do that first and this second and this third. It can be a cycle. And I think we all cycle differently. Yeah. And that's okay. And give yourself permission. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Permission to do it a little differently.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you. You share a quote in your book that I really loved by scholar Sam Brown. I want to read it. The temple tells a divine story about being entangled in a physical body and entangled in the lives of others. That entanglement which shines brightly in the principles and ordinances of the gospel is the mystery of the universe, and it is our pathway to heaven. I'm thinking a lot about human relationships and how messy they can feel sometimes, how messy this life can feel. And sometimes this entanglement he speaks of feels really tangled. But to me, it seems like the great message that God is trying to speak out to us is to draw closer, to continue to draw closer to each other, to Him, to the life around us, and that this is the pathway to heaven. I feel that you're kind of speaking to this a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I just wonder, in a world that feels so divided right now, what solutions do you feel the temple journey is seeking to provide?
Yeah, I think if we really think about the two great commandments, to love the Lord thy God with all our hearts, might, mind, and strength, right? And to love others as ourselves. And to see that, I love the image of the cross in that. We often call it the cruciform shape of God's love. There's such a crucial balance between the vertical and the horizontal, they work together, and we need both desperately. And then I think, let's go back to that idea of the altar cloth as a symbol. Now, if you've never seen one, maybe in your 3 years, you don't actually know what these altar cloths look like. There's actually this great website that has a collection of images of like pioneer era and beyond altar cloths that are lace or tatted, right? Literally, tatting is literally thousands of knots in like a 12 by 14 square inch piece of lace, right? It's all those knots, like the tanglement that Sam Brown mentions there so beautifully. But I think we might also think of it as an interweaving, right? And just imagine if we were trying to learn how to make lace, if we were learning tatting, probably our first 50 attempts would be a tangled mess, right? They'd be a bunch of knots. And I think it's really helpful for me to think of the Lord as the master detangler. And just imagine if you took, your grandma, your attempt at tatting or lace making, and she very patiently said, "Oh, Larkin, this is so good. Look at you. You're doing great." And then as she's praising your work, she'd be untangling your knots and maybe doing a little bit more for you so you'd feel like you're making some progress. And then she'd show you, "Now remember, let's do it like this." It would be practice, right? It would truly be practice. And we can see Christian practice as exactly that. Practice with a father figure or mother figure, whatever image is going to help you feel that incredible love of really divine family. Picture that. And just imagine that detangling that's happening simultaneously to your making new knots, new messes. But there's this master detangling at work that's creating this beautiful image that really is a beautiful symbol of human relationships. We sometimes default to the image of a chain, of generations being like links in a chain. That's really not an ideal image when we're talking about the kingdom of God and the family of God. It's really more like a piece of lace, right? And it's much bigger. It goes in every direction. And everyone that we can reach out and touch is part of that family. And I think ideally we're putting our arms around everyone. That is how we love God, is by doing unto others as he would be doing to them, right? Is being his servant and his assistant in that we're co-collaborating with him, that we're recognizing his atoning love in all the work going on to detangle and expand the lace. I think for me, that really is a powerful image that helps me do better all the time that I'm not in the temple. I can be doing better, practicing all those things that we learn there.
Thank you. That's, such a beautiful image. Thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. I've learned so much. It's been so insightful.
A fun conversation.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I'm excited for our next conversation.
Of course. I look forward to it. Yay. Thanks, Larkin.
Thanks, Mindy.